Hi, everybody, and welcome to another Innovation Insights podcast where we interview founders, investors, and people in the innovation ecosystem, basically talking about how we can bring technology out of the lab and into the market. Today, my guest is Wendy Dawson from Incuentro. And Wendy, if you'd like to just kind of introduce yourself and tell us a bit about what you're doing, I'd like to start off with a little elevator pitch.
Thank you so much. So, hi, everybody. Wendy Dawson here, Houston based woman owned ed tech firm. We have spent the last 2 years creating a virtual reality product to solve some gaps in the market that we saw based on our own experience in our transition center, where we work exclusively with young adults on the autism spectrum, and also been running a nonprofit that I founded for about 16 years now, where we serve a wide range of children and young adults on the autism spectrum through an after school social skills program here in town. So just delighted to be here and share kind of our thoughts and how we've seen the market change and the needs for technology with this population over the past couple decades.
That's awesome. Thanks. And I think it's really interesting, you're working in a certain area and you saw needs developing, you saw technology evolving, and at some point you said, "You know what? There's a nexus here. We need to follow it." Could you go into that a little bit?
Sure. So we started working with children 16 years ago. My own stepson is on the autism spectrum, and these kids start growing up and they hit this age of what we call transition to employment or kind of transition to independence, age 12, age 14. We kind of think it can never start soon enough. But along with that comes an increase in responsibility. And we started training parents on independence is a process. Independence is something you need to start building into your daily routine. Okay, that sounds great, but what kinds of supports and tools and resources can we give the parents to help them? And at the same time, how can we help, the teens or the young adults that we're working with do that? And so even as early as 16 years ago, with that iPhone in their hand, all of a sudden we had magic technology that was able to encourage them, remind them, prompt them, take notes, etc. And so we started building in, reminders like a couple of times a day. Did you take your medicines in the morning? Did you follow your proper hygiene routine? And we could make little check marks on the iPhone. This sounds so simplistic now, but 15, 16 years ago, this was magical.
Trail breaking, yeah.
And we could record scripts. We could curate information. And so the individuals actually had their little learning support system in an iPhone, and they didn't look out of place. They didn't have a flip chart anymore. They weren't trying to open a book on the bus or anything. And when they were poking around on their iPhone, they actually looked pretty cool. So I think that's when we really had our eyes opened to this idea that I love to say technology is almost like an equalizer in a lot of ways, because it helps our friends on the spectrum or with disabilities. It kind of gives them that little edge that they're able to use. So that's really when we first started seeing it, and we've been adopting that into our programs ever since. So
That's awesome. Tell me a little bit about Encuentro. I mean, you're a first-time founder, right? So you've been, you've kind of been an entrepreneur because you were working, you started your own nonprofit, you're working with a lot of people independently, but you said, "Okay, let's form a company around this idea." Tell us a little bit about the genesis of Encuentro.
So, Social Motion was the program that we started. And this was right around the time COVID happened. And we were trying to figure out how could we scale a physical boots on the ground nonprofit in Houston, because we actually teach kids in person and we go to community-based resources so the kids and the families can come to us. And it was really presenting a problem because as a nonprofit, that model is not easily replicated. It's very different in every state. It's a different business model where you have to go out and seek grant funding. And so we decided, well, we're going to license our curriculum and do it that way. So if anybody wanted to teach social skills like what we were doing, we're more than happy to share the knowledge. It's not about the money. It wasn't about creating franchise. So we did that. And, we're kind of always happy to mentor people. But then we're like, what if we could do this on Zoom? What if we could have virtual social skills and virtual classes? And this was before COVID. All right. So we thought we were really cool back then. So we actually had one Zoom account and 5 different people would use it, one after another. And so we'd have a social skills class at 3 o'clock and 4 o'clock and 5 o'clock. And we were just starting to dabble in that and it was working. And it was like, look how amazing this is because we've broadened our audience and we can reach. What really excited us was we could reach families in rural or service deserts that couldn't get to services, right? And Brandy, my co-founder, is prime example of that. The small town in East Texas where she comes from, she was the only BCBA within a 100-mile radius. And we're just like, with technology, we can bust that problem, right? We can absolutely do something different. So we were playing around with virtual social skills. And then COVID hits. And we're like, we can't meet today. We're like, okay, flip the whole company on Zoom. Seriously, we did it in 30 minutes. And people were like, how did you do that? And it was like, I don't know. We've been messing around with this for 6 months, right?
It was kind of already there, right?
It was kind of already there and it was like a no-brainer. So that was kind of a fun. We didn't even know we were kind of on the cutting edge there. And it worked beautifully. And as long as we had to be shut down, we were. And we came back in person as soon as we could. But another interesting thing was happening is that we were getting phone calls from people. How do I prepare for my IEP at school? Where do I find karate lessons for my kid? Who knows a pediatric gastroenterologist who can recommend vitamins or supplements? We're like, I don't know. I don't know. And this independence is a process. They were asking for coaching and we were spending hours on the phone with people, which is great, but unsustainable. And we're like, our heart is in it, but our days are wrecked, right? And we can't even do what we need to do. So that was when we created our first LMS and we started creating courses, basic outline courses. These are the top 100 things that people ask us all the time. And what we're most proud of is we created journey maps. So we have a just diagnosed journey map, which is like an infographic, but it takes you through this path of just got my diagnosis, kind of breathe, get your feet under you, let's gather some information. And it kind of goes through then what do you do? How do you prepare yourself? Because as a mom now, looking back, I wish I had had that information. And so we put that
Right.
online in an LMS and a transition to employment journey path too. Well, the systems that we needed for that technology. Now we got an LMS. Now we're making videos. Now we're talking IP. Now we're talking copyrights and all this stuff. We're like, wait, that's kind of different than the in-person nonprofit stuff that we're doing, right? And believe it or not, there were some people who didn't like us dabbling in this business because they didn't understand cybersecurity and things like that. So we're like, okay, well, we'll start a new company. And the reasons for which we started the nonprofit were primarily to help families fund the tuition to those classes because we're not covered by insurance. We're considered medical in nature. So we wanted a funding mechanism. That didn't really apply when we're popping up this content in LMS, then we can make it available for whatever, $10 or something. So we started the for-profit company and kept growing and morphed all of that information into our in-person direct service center where we actually run it's on assessment for youth and teens and young adults on the spectrum. So they come to our center and they physically work through about 285 tasks in 5 different business lines. And so if they can do task number 1, then they go to 2. If they can do 2, they go to 3. And so we're physically capturing data while they're working. And our staff at our company is all highly qualified educators, which is kind of our differentiator. So we can really understand, have they maxed out? Is it a language issue? Are they taking breaks because is processing wearing them out, or, are there attention difficulties that we need to work with? So all this great and we're loving it, but we got 150 kids a year. And people are calling us and they're like, we want to come to you, and they can't come to us. And again, so
That's
you're
funny.
seeing like this
So
pattern in
so
my life, right?
it's like you start with this focus thing, then you scale it, then you go back to a focus thing, and now you gotta scale it again. But it's kind of a whole different model. You've been evolving over a period of time, and now you're meeting people exactly where they need. I think you said something very interesting at the beginning, well, a little while ago. You said, I wish I would have had this. And I find so many entrepreneurs who start a company simply because they wish they had something that wasn't available, and they create it and then they share it. And that's really what you're doing at Inquintro, except you're taking it to the next level. So tell me, one of the challenges is going to be this scaling. So, 150 people is not something you can build a business around. You've got to grow it. How are you going to do that?
So we had this crazy idea one day. I love virtual reality, and we were using the virtual reality goggles in some of our classes and watching as education was trying to adopt this idea of, oh, we can go to the moon and study astrology, or we can actually go to the bottom of the ocean and look at biology. And I was like, well, why can't we do that? So we're like, what would it take for us to flip our in person model to virtual again? And so it was a really big undertaking, and we were lucky enough. It was a lot of work, but we got an NSF grant, a National Science Foundation grant. We wrote this idea of, what if we can create a virtual reality career assessment where the individuals are actually doing these tasks in virtual reality instead of in our physical classroom. And voila, that way we can expand. And it just got better and better and better from there. We really were able to pull in a lot of the expertise from our educators about standardization and trajectory and validation and auditability into a data-based assessment rather than the subjective paper-based tests that
Right.
kids are using today. And so we got the grant, and we spent this first year what they called risking this project. And so it was really fascinating. So we built it and we prototyped it, and we've had it in a couple of classrooms. And so the beauty is now we're applying for phase 2, coming back to your question. And so we're going to use phase 2 money to test this project, to continue seeking the validation and the evidence base. So funders' money is not being used for validation, but rather we're going to use the funders' money for the commercialization and scale. So we're kind of what I've termed evidence gated for the next year, maybe, until we can really get this prototype beta tested and pilot tested in the schools and the voc rehab providers, career technical exploration. But once we've got that data, working with university data scientists and research partners, then we're ready to roll. And so that's really when it's like, we're gearing up for this, people. Like, it's coming. Here's our data. We're going to show you that it works. And then we'll need some people to help us do that, and some marketing behind it, and lots of legal and lots of,
Yeah.
contracts and stuff to get it out there. But the return on investment, because at the end of the day, that's what your funders want, right, is amazing, because nobody else has done this. And your TAM, your SAM, your SOM, all that good stuff is absolutely huge, even if we look at just the autism market. But we've created this to be kind of with universal design thinking too. And there's
Sure.
no reason, like, we've already identified all these kind of ancillary, next level markets. And so we're really excited about the product and getting it out there. And we're going to have lots of good stuff to show funders, and really hoping they'll be excited about it too, while we radically change the lives of the neurodiverse population, which is where our
That's
heart
awesome.
lives. So
Yeah. I saw you present at the Neurotech Frontiers in San Diego about 2 months ago, and it blew me away what you're doing. And I think,
Thank you.
it's just, yeah, I ran up to you right after your presentation and introduced myself because I'm like, this is great stuff. And obviously, as an impact investor, I'm always looking for people who are going to move the needle for society, and I think you guys are going to do that. So congratulations
Thank you.
on your success so far, and wishing you continued success. And I love having you on. I always ask my innovators and entrepreneurs one thing. If there's something our community, the audience that's watching this, could do for you, what would that be? What's your wish?
We would love more pilot testing sites. So, if anybody listening, if you're a small private special school, a public school district, anybody who works in workforce solutions, etc., please reach out to me personally. It's wendy@incuentro.com, or you can look for more information on our website. But we only get better by learning what our community really needs. So, pilot sites, we'd love to work with you.
That's perfect. Well, thanks, Wendy. We'll be putting up a slide that shows all your contact information. So we'll make sure people can reach you if they want to find you. And thanks again for being on Innovation Insights. And please, people, if you like this, share it with your friends. Tell everybody about what we're doing. We've got some great conversations going here. And Wendy's just the latest in a list of wonderful entrepreneurs. Thanks,
Thanks,
Wendy.
Jay. You're the best. Keep it going forward. Thanks.
You got it. Bye.
Bye.